Good morning, NBA listeners all across the world and the country. This is the Morning Tip off Spreaker. I'm your host, Danny Thompson, checking you this morning live here on Spreaker. Big game last night in the league. We're going to get over to you. Also, we'll take your calls, talk a little fantasy hoops, and preview the 7-game slate in the NBA tonight as we go into Full Court Press Radio on 96.9 The Game and 7:40 a.m. iHeartRadio at 9 p.m. Eastern. To check in with us this morning, 407-378-3717. Again, 407-378-3717. Interesting night in the league last night. Some crazy matchups, some crazy finishes, but we're going to start with the NBA's best team against one of the more underrated teams, at least in my opinion, in the NBA. We're talking Warriors, Pistons, game of the night, Oakland last night. Well, it wasn't the game of the night, but on paper, you had two teams that were the Pistons, up and coming. They just played a tremendous game on Sunday night, coming back on the Blazers. They were 5-2 going to the game. Andre Drummond averaging 20 a game. Continuing that double streak. Reggie Jackson had scored 40 the night before, 26 points in the fourth, and really the Pistons had was to the point where they're coming of age. They came back with a 41-11 fourth quarter run on Sunday, going against the Dubs. As we all know, they're undefeated. They're at home. Steph Curry shooting a video game every single night. Klay Thompson. And last night, it seemed like the Pistons were out of gas. They had expended so much energy in the fourth on Sunday against Portland, and they fell short 109-95 to the Warriors last night. 24 points from Klay Thompson, 22 from Steph Curry. Andre Drummond, his eighth double season, 14 points, 15 rebounds. Stanley Johnson, nice game for the Pistons, career high 20 points. Reggie Jackson had 20. But really, the Warriors are pretty much unbeatable at home. You just have a hard time beating them. They've only lost, I think, 2 or 3 times in the last 50. One of them was to the Grizzlies in the playoffs. And really, when the Warriors at home, it's pretty much lights out. And really, the crowd was involved. And the Pistons, they were a little out of it. Like I said, back-to-back, an emotional game, a tough game on Sunday against Portland, and they looked flat. I said yesterday that was going to come to that. This was a good barometer for the Pistons. Now, let's see what they do after this game. Going forward, the Pistons are one of those teams in the East that can make a lot of damage, but at the same time, they can implode at the same time. Really, the big key, Golden State, 37-27 bench production, Andre Iguodala, and those guys contributed way more to the Pistons bench. Like I said, they got 20 from Johnson, but really not much more for anybody else. Drummond, if you watch Andre Drummond, he's so fluid athletically. It's just, I don't know. When I watch Drummond, he's the best rebounder I've seen since a young Dwight Howard. And when I say young Dwight Howard, we're talking Dwight Howard 12, Orlando, the first 4 or 5 years, just that instinct to the ball. And he's so big, the hands are big, and it looks like when he's out there, he's like the biggest player on the court, and there's nobody big enough to guard him. Even looking like him next to Festus Ezeli tonight. Now, Ezeli is not a small guy by any stretch, but Drummond just seems to dwarf this guy. Like he's big, some kind of big superhero. And really, Golden State, they got contributions of everybody. Draymond Green struggled from the floor, but I think he had 12 rebounds. I think it's 7, 8, 9 assists. So he did things in other ways besides score the basketball. And so if you get the Warriors doing all this, and they did without Bogut last night, because I wonder if Bogut's in there, does Drummond get all those rebounds, especially on the offensive glass? Because Bogut is such a good defender and rebounder. Could he Dre off the glass? But the Warriors 8-0, best team in the league. Pistons fall to 5-3. You know, either this could be a game that could help the Pistons going forward, or this could be the game where it's a backbreaker and they can struggle for the rest of November. So we want to see what Stan Van Gundy can do going forward and how he gets his team motivated to go into their next battle on Wednesday. So 109-95, Golden State 8-0 on the year. As we transition to teams that are actually peaking and streaking, the Minnesota Timberwolves have gone in the last two games against two of the better teams in the Eastern Conference on the road and have impressively beat both of them. They beat Chicago in overtime on Saturday, where Chicago scored 0 points in overtime, and Andrew Wiggins shut down Jimmy Butler. To last night in the Highlight Factory in Atlanta, at one point had 34-point lead on the Atlanta Hawks. We're saying 34 points. It wasn't like the second quarter. It was late in the third. And when you watch the Timberwolves, they're so much fun to watch. Andrew Wiggins on the wing, Carl Anthony Towns post, Ricky Rubio getting the ball, Kevin Martin as a shooter, Shabazz Muhammad, even though he didn't do much last night, just slashing the basket. You have Levine. You know, the Timberwolves are an interesting team, and I know we've been reading it everywhere. Tam Richardson's friend of the show, she's big on them. But watching this team evolve, it has to be on Wiggins. And last night, Wiggins, his second straight 30-plus point game, scoring 33 last night and 5 rebounds. But he's made a signature move. And if you're looking out there, 2K, NBA Live, these basketball simulators, Wiggins' move is that spin move in the lane and dunks on people. That's all I'm going to say. Watch the spin move. And Towns is becoming better and better as each game goes along. I personally didn't think he would be this good this early, only because the Timberwolves have such a log jam on the front line. You know, Garnett, Prince, uh, Pekovic, Adrian Payne. They have so many good bigs that I thought Towns would be rushed along slowly, but he's not. Last night, Towns, 17 points, 12 rebounds, and he's providing a defensive presence, and he looks good for a rookie. He doesn't look like one. Now, we're only a few games in the season, but especially in the last two nights against some good quality big men, all the bigs in Chicago, Al Horford in Atlanta, Towns has made a name for himself. I mean, you look at the week before, he was putting in work as Denver, the Lakers. It wasn't the big time front lines, Portland, but in the last couple games, Minnesota has beaten Chicago and Atlanta on the road. Now the Hawks, you got to give them credit. They cut the entire lead from 34 and actually took the lead with around 3 minutes left in the game before Minnesota closed out with an 11-0 run. But you look at the Hawks, and Jeff Teague's 24 points, Millsap 22. The Hawks hit 13 three-pointers, but Kyle Korver only hit one. So you got to give Coach Bud and that defense a lot of credit. It seemed like they used all their energy down the stretch and didn't have anything late for the young pups. The pups, like I said, two straight wins on the road against two of the East elite teams, Chicago and Atlanta. 407 378 3717 is the number to check in. We're just talking about the pups or the Timberwolves and this young team. And really, it's been, like I said, about Wiggins. It's been about Towns. People have been sleeping on Ricky Rubio. And Coach, I mean, it seemed like Flip Saunders has his team, moving in a different direction. It seems like they have something over them. And I mean that in a good way, nothing in a bad way. I just feel like this team is way more inspired, because of Flip Saunders than they are beforehand. The Wolves now 4-2. Like I said, two huge wins on the road against Eastern Conference opponents. Before we go to break, let's talk about your hometown Orlando Magic falling on the road to the Indiana Pacers, 97-84. Paul George, 19 of his 27 in the first quarter. Finished the game with 27 points, 7 assists, knocked out a couple of three-pointers. The underrated George Hill, 23 points, 7 rebounds, 4 three-pointers. You know, the Pacers, very interesting team because they win the game last night. But Monta Ellis scoring 1-9 from the floor. Also, Rodney Stuckey re-sprained his ankle. And the Pacers don't have much talent. I like Miles Turner. He's getting off the bench more, 10 points off the bench last night. But if Paul George has to carry his team with no help, I don't know if they make the playoffs. It's one of those things where you have to. have more help. Maybe George Hill has to step up again, and somehow people can start recognizing this guy as more than just some guy that was made a trade for Kawhi Leonard. But the Magic struggled 39% of the floor, 21 points for Evan Fournier, another good game for him. Jason Cook on the NBA FCP Radio.com wrote a great piece on Fournier potentially being Orlando's breakout guy. And really, Fournier's been going up to the role. 21 last night. Tobias Harris struggled. 3 of 13 shooting, only 8 points. Victor Oladipo, 15 of 7. And they returned back to the state of Indiana where he played college ball at 7 of 18 from the floor. Victor is one of these guys who I thought, especially Magic in training camp, was going to be the guy that's turned the corner, become the franchise player. But in the early going, it just seems like he's lost out there. It feels like he hasn't made that turn. You would think Team USA playing with these guys, the elite players in the league over the summer, would have gotten his mindset in the right place. The same thing with Tobias Harris. But Oladipo needs to step his game up. Now, he had a good game on Friday, but last night it just seemed like it wasn't there. The shot's not falling. He doesn't seem like he wants to the basket. It seems like he's tentative to draw fouls. I have no idea what's wrong with Victor, but if Orlando's going to make any type of run in the Eastern Conference, they're going to need something from Victor, especially we're looking at a stat line, I'm going to say, of 25 and 5 every night consistently for the Magic to take the next leap. Because if you're relying on Fournier to give you all the scoring, that's going to be a problem. And the Magic did not have Vooch again last night. Dwayne Dedmon started his place. So it could be the fact of Vooch not being in the game, but with Vooch not being in the game, that means Oladipo has stepped his game up even more. It's the Pacers' third straight home win in a row. Pacers are starting to find their legs. Paul George is flexing his muscle. Don't forget, George is still an MVP candidate. I know people want to hand this award out to Steph Curry, but don't sleep on Paul George. Don't sleep on Andre Drummond, Westbrook and Durant in Oklahoma City, Blake Griffin and Clippers, James Harden, who was Western Conference Player of the Week last week. He's got himself back in the race. So there are way more candidates than people realize. But the Magic have to find some kind of way to get together. We'll have an injury update on Stuckey on NBFC Radio tonight. Like I said, he sprained his ankle again. The second one he sprained, the same one, I'm sorry, he sprained on Friday night against the Heat. And if he's out for a significant amount of time, Ellis has to step up. CJ Miles to step up. They had to find somebody else to provide the scoring. And what Stuckey also brings is that Stuckey gets the basket, Stuckey gets to the line. He does a lot more than just score the basketball. He's a pretty good ball handler as well, too, and allows Ellis and Hill to play off the ball when he's in the game as well, too. So we're going to take a quick break, pay some bills. We're going to talk about the other 4 games that we haven't talked about yet, including Spurs, Kings, fantasy hoops, and anything you want to talk about. 407-378-3717. This is the Morning Tip-Off with Spreaker. We'll be right back after these messages.
Are you looking for a fun experience on the water with your family?